Thank you. And let me first start by saying, Ms. Milano, I apologize that you had to endure such cruel, callous, and sexist question line presented by my colleague. St. Louis and I thank you, Madam Chair, for convening this hearing. Equal rights for everyone are still not codified in this country, and it shows. Ratifying the ERA after over a century of struggle will help advance social, economic, and racial justice. It will improve the lived experiences for Black women who are disproportionately affected by inequality and inequity in this country. It is not surprising that the slaveholders, all white men, who wrote the Constitution did not write in equal rights across genders. And it is not surprising that their disregard for gender equity has disproportionately harmed Black women, brown women, Indigenous women, and trans women. In my district and in districts across the country, Black women are subjected to harmful policies that make us more likely to be evicted, be underpaid, die during childbirth, lack access to abortion, and be victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and police brutality. Notice I said and. In 2020, 4 Black women and girls were murdered per day in our country. Racial inequality is a crisis in this country. And it's crucial we recognize and acknowledge the impact the ERA would have on our community. Ms. Jenkins, passing the ERA is a racial justice issue. How would it help women of color, specifically Black women, if the ERA were ratified?
Thank you so much for your question and for your experience and for your bravery and your support of the Equal Rights Amendment. I think what we saw during the pandemic was something that most of us thought was true, but some of us didn't want to face, and some of us still don't want to face, and that is the extraordinary gap in access to absolutely everything that this country says that it gives to its citizens. And we found out who the essential workers were. And we found out what the essential workers were. And we found out that most of the essential workers were Black women, women of color, underpaid, raising families, trying to feed their children, trying to put shelter, give them shelter, and extraordinarily more and more difficult to do so. And so many of them who, in some cases, we see that this discrepancy of the workforce is that women have not been able to go back to work because they're taking care of their children. And in some cases, Black women, women of color, have to go back, even though they have children, because there is no way, to take care of the food and the shelter. So we have this crisis in this country where, as one of the things that I wake up in the morning and I hear this, 250,000 women went missing last year. 100,000 of those were women of color or trans women. Is anybody looking for them? And the answer that we're afraid of is that no, they're not, because women are not valued, and because women of color and Black women are not valued. The Equal Rights Amendment is what we need to finally establish that we are all full citizens of this country, and that we all deserve the rights and the protections and the recourse. And so this is what we believe will do it. The Constitution is the problem. The Constitution has to be fixed. Nothing else will do it.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment, your response. It is also not surprising that women of color and queer women of color are leading the fight for gender equity. Today, Black and Indigenous women face higher rates of domestic violence than any other groups. We see achieving gender equality, which you just talked to. We see achieving gender equality as a fundamental piece of achieving justice and ensuring our very survival at a moment when LGBTQ plus community women, the Black community, are under attack like never before. We must advocate for policies that protect our rights and our dignity with the force of law. Ms. Salcedo, I was struck by your written testimony that without the ERA, the Equality Act may lack the constitutional standing to effectively protect trans women and trans women of color. So why do we need the ERA in addition to laws like the Equality Act, to protect trans women of color in our communities?
Thank you so much. The ERA is very clear. I mean, we need a constitutional protection for all peoples. And, you know, the Equality Act unfortunately does not do that. The Constitution will do that when the ERA, it's there.
Thank you, and I yield back.